everybody, and welcome to our Season 3 finale for Haunted Vermont. And tonight, I'm going to be talking to you all about St. Michael's. So St. Michael's College is located in Colchester, Vermont. It's one of those colleges you drive by all the time and admire the beauty of the historic buildings. Seemingly a picture-perfect campus with a typical Vermont look and appeal, but there are strange things going on behind locked doors. St. Michael's, or St. Mike's as it is known locally, campus may have ghostly inhabitants. The theater supposedly is haunted by a long dead nun who assists, or more likely frightens, actors. Incidents have been reported of props mysteriously disappearing during performances with no explanation. Some claim that the men's first-year dormitory also houses an evil presence. In fact, there are many paranormal stories about St. Michael's College, including curses, ghosts, and a disembodied arm, and even an axe massacre alert in the area. A rumor persists that in the 60s or 70s, young men were taking part in some sort of occultist rituals within the walls of St. Mike's. During one such covert meeting, a participant claims that he needed to close the portal before everyone involved in the ritual left. But by the time security had arrived and the group was escorted off campus, the door to the attic is padlocked shut. However, eerie lights have been seen in the attic. Footsteps have been heard in the middle of the night by residents sleeping on the top floor. Joseph Citro confirmed in his book Vermont Haunts that the Pentagram does indeed exist. And as of 2011, the image of the Pentagram still appears on the floor despite attempts to remove it. For much more stories about St. Michael's College, read Joe Citro's wonderfully eerie book, Vermont Haunts. So, I'm actually going to read some of more about the Pentagram, actually. So, I'm going to start with the secrets of St. Michael's. So, in the fall of 2006, I visited St. Michael's College in Colchester. The first thing I noticed was a Baroque cross, strangely askew, high atop Founders Hall. Could it be some arcane symbol warning me that all was not right? And if so, what legends, secrets, and supernatural shenanigans might it be challenging me to discover? Because Founders in the oldest building on campus, it seemed like the perfect place to begin looking for mysteries. I soon learned that one of the school's most unsettling terror tales is said to have happened there. So in the early 1970s, a small group of students entered the building late at night and climbed quietly to the attic. There they commenced a ritual that most assuredly would be banned at any self-respecting Catholic college. They tried to summon Satan. First, they drew a pentagram on the floor and punctuated it each point with a candle. Then, perhaps nervously, they began their satanic seance. And as the evening passed, persistence seemed to pay off. Something appeared outside the window. A green, glowing ball, like a hideous head, seemed to be staring at them. Startled by their apparent success, they did the only sensible thing. They ran away. When word got around that this crew had had the daylight scared out of them, the Edmundite priests went up to check, and in the attic they found the chalk-inscribed pentagram on the floor, and quickly removed it. After a thorough treatment of prayer and holy water, they left and locked the building. End of story? Of course not. Repeated for decades, the story is still very much alive on campus. At one point or another, every student hears it. Can there be any substance to such an enduring tale? The parable of the pentagram. I think there's a lot of physical evidence to suggest that something happened up there. that college doesn't want to talk about. Quoted by Brian Anderson. I first learned about the Pentagram when talking to the alumnus Brian Anderson, who, while a student, had worked on the paint crew and with the fire and rescue. These activities gained him entrance to every building on campus. And over the years, patience and vigilance allowed him to piece together a more complete version of the events. Thanks to his investigative efforts, we now have a fleshier version of the tale. And Brian has a career as an undercover investigator in federal law enforcement. For one thing, Brian is convinced that the events occurred at Joyce Hall, not Founders, nor Alumni Hall, as some students insist. There is at least one good reason to believe that Joyce has an attic big enough to house elephants, while Founders contains only a crawl space. And according to Brian's research, the St. Michael students were led astray by a visiting Satanist from Burlington, Vermont. In 1971 or 72, Brian told me. It was an older gentleman who got some kids interested in Satan's workshop and the power that might hold. Their sinister activities were discovered one night when a resident assistant, R.A., heard the noise in the attic where he knew nothing should be going on. He went up to investigate and came upon a group of students sitting in a circle, a pentagram in the middle, and candles at the points of the pentagram. Students were in some sort of trance. He recognized some and didn't recognize everybody. Perhaps the RA didn't immediately grasp the full import of what he was seeing. He broke up the event, kind of chastised everybody, sent them on their way. He didn't recognize a few, but at the time didn't take the effort to get down the names of everyone involved. Brian says a pentagram had been drawn on the floor. The RA kind of removed it. It was a hardwood floor, didn't make a report of it, and just let it go. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, a similar event occurred. This time, the RA reported it when he discovered many of the same students, along with others he didn't recognize. All of them were chanting. The RA broke up the group after taking names, but some who were not St. Michael's students vanished before surrendering any identifying information. After discussing things with the resident director, the two decided to bring the apparent sacrilege to the attention of the campus ministry. I think when you look at the Catholic college, Brian told me, what are the things a Catholic college doesn't want to talk about? Devil worship would certainly be high on the list. And in the early 70s, he continues, the Edmundite priests played a huge role in what was going on. And they basically flipped over the issue. Some were very stern warnings, went out to those very students. And then Brian says the priests actually went up there. I don't think they performed an actual exorcism, but they blessed the whole room. They splashed holy water on the spot where the pentagram had been, after it had been washed away. Some crosses went up in the corners of the dormitory, and I believe that the attic was locked. That's the story as I recall it, that they locked it, and at that point, banned it from use. But the stubborn Satanists were not so easily put off. By the time the dorms had shut down for Christmas vacation, only one person, the resident director, was residing in Joyce Hall. One evening he came home to sound of voices. Some were overhead. Since no one was supposed to be in the building, he grabbed the flashlight and headed out to investigate. He walked from end to end of the long shadowy corridor, and as he ascended another floor, the sounds got louder. And when he reached the 4th floor, he realized the voices were coming from the attic. Someone had smashed the lock to the attic door. Listening at the opening, he recognized chanting, but the words were unfamiliar. The RD put in a call to security and waited. From where he stood, he could tell the electric lights were turned off upstairs, but he saw flickering of the candles. He allowed the police about 15 minutes before climbing carefully upstairs, and in the candlelight he spied a cluster of crouched figures. Shadows danced about overhead, but the stillness of the thing at the center of the pentagram scared all thought from his head. It was a body, a maimed sheep in a pool of blood, a sacrifice. The RD turned away only to be met by campus security. This time the administration came down really hard on the students, and all were expelled and escorted quietly off campus. The incident concludes, Brian says, when the priest went up there and really went lock, stock, and barrel. Holy water everywhere. Prayers. I heard they might have been up there for 24 hours in the constant prayer vigil. And according to some versions of the story, the dark nights, as the intruders have come to be called, were not in the attic to summon something. Rather, they were trying to keep something away, to close a portal between this world and some other. Perhaps that is why they stubbornly kept returning to perform their ritual at the same location time after time, even after it had been locked up and they had been officially banished from campus. The pentagram, whether chalked, waxed, painted, carved, or burned into the floor, stayed around to continue its dirty work. Some students say that no effort can remove it. This grim story endures. Brian believes because of what befell the poor students who in the subsequent years lived beneath the pentagram, a variety of things have happened in the room underneath where the pentagram was drawn on the floor. So much so, I believe that they don't assign that room to students anymore. In fact, it is used for storage. I don't know if that's true today. I believe that was true a few years ago when I worked at the school. But supposedly, one or more students committed suicide. Other students suffered from migraines, the inability to sleep, hearing voices, things of that nature. A few students left school suffering from massive depression. So the room itself got a reputation. I'm pretty sure that for a while no students lived in that room. The college didn't assign that room, and as I said, I don't know if that's still the case today. Maybe not. But it would seem something is still up there. As recently as December 2004, fourth floor resident Deidre Krekel, class of '08, told the online student magazine, The Echo, how just as she was ready to go to bed, the windows in her room were closed, but the door just opened. It's a pretty heavy door, and I freaked out. Then for an hour afterward, there was just banging above me, and I couldn't go to bed. Other Joyce residents, Victoria Townsend of '08 and Rachel Zimmerman of '08, say that they heard constant banging from the attic. Well, this might be attributable to something as mundane as heating ducts. How would we explain the near constant sound of people running around overhead? It's usually not that bad, Miss Zimmerman said, but some nights it's ridiculous. When asked if anyone could corroborate his version of the St. Michael story, Brian Anderson thought a moment and said, I really don't know who. The best people would be the priests who were there at the time, but I know that they wouldn't talk to you. I know because they won't even talk about it to people that they know. So, there's a little interesting tale for you from St. Michael's. And if you want to read more about St. Michael's, check it out in Vermont Haunts by Joseph Citro. So, that being said, I want to thank you all for listening to the season finale and hope you enjoyed it. And we can't wait to haunt you again in season 4. Do you have a story? Leave us a voice message. Thank you and good night.